Thank you. Okay, I want to just address a few of the points quickly. Starting with the last point Ilan made, let me put it another way. Let's imagine that in 1985, the apartheid regime in South Africa announced that it had invented a cure to cancer. And really imagined that it had done that. No doubt the entire world would benefit from this. But would we then say, okay, that's great. We're so grateful that you can continue to oppress black people? I don't think that would be the right answer. Now, I think the lady who asked the first question is exactly, well, I want to say the question here, yes, is exactly right. Any attempt to repartition Palestine in a so-called two-state solution will not lead to the fantasy of two states living side by side in peace. Every previous example of a kind of an ethnic partition shows that it will lead to ethnic cleansing. And we don't have to guess about this because the Israelis themselves are saying it. The Israeli Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman put it this way. He said, well, if we have a Palestinian state in the West Bank, and then in Israel we still have more than 1 million Palestinians, then you have one Palestinian state, 1.5 Palestinian states and half a Jewish state. That's what he says. And he says very openly, so we must get rid of the Palestinians from inside Israel. And he gave this proposal, he made this proposal in the UN General Assembly in September. And he's not the only one, because other Israelis are saying it, and you read in the Israeli press every day articles trying to legitimize this idea. And what examples do they use? They use the examples of the Sudeten Germans, they use the examples of the population, so-called population exchange between Turkey and Greece, and they say, well, so what's the difference? The difference is now is 2010. It's not 1923, it's not 1945. We now have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We have the UN Charter, and we cannot repeat these things. We cannot repeat these massive violations of human rights. So you're exactly right. An attempt to create a two-state solution would most likely result in the ethnic cleansing, or at very least, the increasing victimization of Palestinians within Israel, not to two states living side by side in peace. Regarding the question about the Madrid conference, that conference was simply an initiative of academics and activists. There was our good friend Carlos in Spain, yes, who initiated it and said, let's have this conference. Exactly as
not
he...
Not terrorist.
Not Carlos the Jackal, yes. Carlos...
Carlos the Peacemaker.
Yes, Carlos... I'm going to tell you his name because I don't remember it, to give him the proper credit. I'll find it.
I will look for it.
Here it is, here it is. Carlos Prieto del Campo. He was one among several academics and activists who said, let's do this, and invited us to Spain, and they got this conference accepted as part of an annual summer university that they do. In other words, they used the resources that they could find to do it, just as here you have this conference. So this was a civil society initiative, as this conference is. And I know that there are people here from Munich and from Berlin and from other cities in Germany. So I would say to you, repeat this conference in Munich and Berlin, but with more people and different people, as well as the people here. That's how these ideas will influence the international community. It won't be because Barack Obama or Angela Merkel says let's do it. It will be because the civil society does it. The final point, just 10 seconds, regarding the international situation. The only point I want to make about this, we see now a very dangerous connection between the policies and practices of Israel and a process of Israelification in the United States and Europe. That European governments and policies are starting to see the world like Israel sees the world. And we see the spreading Islamophobia, which Israel is encouraging. Israel is saying, oh, our problem is not that we took the Palestinians' land and we should give it back to them. The problem is they're Muslims and they're crazy. This is what Israel wants everyone to believe. And the far-right politicians in Europe are saying the same thing. And they're saying we have to stand with Israel, who are facing the same threat as us from the Muslims. And this is what Geert Wilders is saying in the Netherlands. This is what the far-right parties are saying in Italy. And we see worrying trends in Germany. And the question I want to ask is, who is standing up to it? And are the people who are standing up to it as loud as those racists and Islamophobes? Because we don't hear them being as loud yet. And this is something that is very important for German and European civil society to confront. Thank you. Well, I agree with everything Ilan said. That's what you were worried about, that we would agree on everything. And I'll say just something about the questions that were asked. I agree that a one-state solution would also be a solution for the rest of the region, because so much of the problems in the region is a result of the external support for Israel as a racist state in the region, and the need for Arab regimes that go along with this and that serve Israel's interests and the United States' interests, as we see many of the Arab regimes do, against the wishes of their people. And this is why we can't have democracy in Arab countries. It's not permitted, because if you had democracy, people would not vote for governments that have peace treaties with Israel, or trade relations with Israel, or other things. So you have to have undemocratic governments in order to maintain Israel as an apartheid state. So it's a regional problem as well. In terms of Arab voices, I'm glad there was a reference to Yasser Arafat's speech. I was going to quote it myself. But in 1974, he gave a brilliant speech to the United Nations. And with all due respect to Yasser Arafat, he wasn't a brilliant speaker, and certainly not a brilliant thinker or writer. I might be offending people here if I say that, but that's the truth. That particular speech was largely written by Edward Said. And it remains a brilliant document. If you go online and look up the speech which Arafat gave to the UN in 1974, where he laid out the vision of a single state, and he said, and I'm paraphrasing, when we talk about the future of Palestine, we talk about the place where Palestinians and Jews will live together, but on the basis of non-discrimination. So that vision is not new. I didn't invent it. Ilan Pape didn't invent it. Haidar Eid didn't invent it. But I think what we are doing is bringing it back, or trying to bring it back. And it's true, it has been not totally absent, but marginalized in Arab discourse. But it's also now coming back. And you see this discussion happening even on Al Jazeera and places like that. You know, when my book came out a few years ago, nobody talked about this, and people thought, you know, it's stupid to even talk about it. Why talk about it? Today, the Zionists are going crazy because of how fast this idea is spreading. And that's an important shift, a paradigm shift that's happening. Regarding the question about can a two-state solution be a step towards one state? Well, if you listen carefully to what we said, then you would know the answer is no. Because saying that two states is a step towards one state is like saying slavery is a step towards freedom, or apartheid is a step towards democracy. You can't get there from here. It's a dead end. And not only is it's not a benign solution which simply keeps things as they are. As I was saying, I believe a two-state solution will not keep the status quo. It will lead to ethnic cleansing of Palestinians within Israel. So it's not only unworkable and unjust, but it's a dangerous idea. And we see more and more the danger of it emerging. Regarding the question of Jews when they are a minority, often this is talked about as if there is a choice. You will hear Israelis or Zionists say, but if there's a one-state solution, we'll be a minority. No, you'll be a minority anyway. You're a minority now. Within historic Palestine, which is controlled totally by the Israeli government, some people think Haidar lives under the Hamas government. But the Hamas government actually doesn't decide if Haidar enters or leaves Gaza, or if there's chocolate in Gaza or building materials in Gaza. Swiss chocolate? Okay. Yeah, because Swiss chocolate is neutral. Yeah. This is all decided by the Israeli government. So you already have one government in Palestine, and within historic Palestine, Jews are already now 50% and probably already a minority. In 10 years, in 20 years, they will be maybe 45% or 40%, we don't know. And this is why the Israelis are panicked and trying to find ways to get rid of more Palestinians. So the choice, the fact is, Jews will be a minority. The question is, how will they exist as a minority? Will they exist as an apartheid minority ruling over the majority, which is the direction they seem to want to go? Or will they exist as a community among the other communities in the country? And I believe they should exist as the latter. And recognize also the cost that Zionism has imposed on Jews and their cultures. Because Zionism tries to create a monoculture. A single, you may have seen the former chief rabbi of Israel, Ovadia Yosef, recently, Abdullah Yusuf, who he was born as, in Iraq. Every Saturday in his sermon, he says, curse those Arabs and damn them, those snakes, those dogs, whatever. The other day he called for a plague on the Arabs. Well, Ovadia Yusuf is an Arab. So when Abdullah Yusuf, the spiritual leader of Shas, calls for a plague on the Arabs, who's he calling a plague on? See, the majority of Jews in Israel today, are of Arab origin. This is something people don't realize. So Zionism has created a situation where you're not allowed to be a Jew and an Arab. Liberation means that a Jew can be an Arab and an Arab can be a Jew also. So I believe that an end to Zionist apartheid will also liberate Jews and free them from the cultural restrictions that Zionism imposes on them, and allow them to rediscover or recreate or develop or whatever all the aspects of Jewish heritage and culture that existed all around the world, and in the Arab world as well. And some things will stay. The Hebrew language, I also have done my best to learn Hebrew. I'm not fluent, but I also think Hebrew is a beautiful language. There's no reason not to learn Hebrew. You know, the beautiful thing about language is you can say anything you want in it. You don't have to say Zionist things in Hebrew. You can say anti-Zionist things in Hebrew. So I have no problem with the Hebrew language. I think it's wonderful. Its future will be secure. The question is, the longer we wait, the harder it's going to be. So we don't have a choice about the demographics. We only have a choice of how we relate to each other. And we have to make good choices.